other than me talking about bringing down production servers, which, it's not even news. No. Oh, hold on. What did I not mute? Hold on. What is... Are you hearing anything? And are you hearing an echo from me? Because I'm not sure what is going in. Because I'm hearing the stream, but oh no, I know where it is. I know what happened. I'm an idiot. Okay. I have it. Oh, I have the stream open in like two different browsers. One as the show and one as me. And I have to move that out of the way. And yeah, the one that was in the one that was in. See, there you go. You there you go. It's you're worried about tech issues, and meanwhile, I have the stream. I'm listening to the stream like a second later because I have it open in Edge. So uh again, I work with computers for a living, so it is what it is. All right. All right. I have an Audacity open. So I mean, in the interest of time, I'm ready to start recording when you all are. So, all right, I am recording. Okay. Oh, you know what? I think I was thinking about turning my recording. Is the track on my or the volume on my track, is that generally very low at all? Because I think it's set to like 56% when I'm looking at it, which is probably too low. I just want to try turning this up a little bit and see if that makes a difference, but okay, that looks a little bit better. You'd be well, I always have to like I always have to boost the raw audio like a lot. Like I have to do like heavy compression to get my audio the same as yours, as the both of you. So I think I'm just gonna turn that up to like, yeah, like maybe not quite that high. Okay. Anyway, I'm recording. Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. Is okay. Okay. Yeah, you were just okay. I'll wait for you before we start the show. Yeah, yeah. Well, we were just looking at it, just like you were just like sitting there waiting to clap. Oh, hold on. Did I not? Hold on. Oh, you know what? I didn't. Oh, I'm also an idiot. Hold on. Uh. Okay. Can you hear them now? Because yeah, I didn't switch Discord over to the. Can you say something? Because they weren't hearing you on Discord. They were only hearing me.
Something.
And can you guys hear us now?
Okay.
What's up?
Yeah. Hopefully that fixes it. Yeah. I'm.
Somebody in chat, let us know
okay.
if we're good.
Okay.
We're
all
good.
right,
cool.
we did it.
All right. Let's just.
Do we want to clap again?
This.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap.
Clap.
I thought you were just holding off on clapping to mess with us now, and like.
Sorry. No, we're good. I got the second one. Okay.
All right. Starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to episode 411 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, August 31st, 2023 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
And from Teldersill, California, we have Megasa. And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. As always, thank you so much for your reviews. If you'd like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice. So, I don't know about you all, but I've been playing some of this Control Lock.
Oh.
I guess I do know, because I see that all of you have been, all of us have been playing some of this Control Lock.
If it wasn't Twist starting tomorrow, I think this would probably be Dexplanations, because we've all put like
100%.
significant amounts of time. Maybe this will be next week if this deck is still around, and I hope it is. But yeah,
yeah, it kind of. I forget who made the post, but it definitely came up in the Coin Concede Discord. This tweet about someone who was doing well with the Control Warlock, not J-Lock. There's no Jiraxis, but just. Control with Sargeras and Symphony, because sometimes you high roll the discounted Sargeras, and that's really freaking good. And it's just because there's still like 18% Warrior, it's very good at beating Warrior. And does okay against other stuff. And then with Hunter being nerfed, I feel like it's maybe even a little better position, because one of the hits was to Arcane Hunter, which I know has been my nemesis on ladder for a lot of the things I was playing.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how good the Hunter player is, because I've definitely demolished some Hunters that didn't realize that you are not supposed to play all the 4/1s out at the same time against the Warlock, because they just play Mortal Eradication and destroy everything in heal 6. So... Mm-hmm. That's something that I've definitely benefited from. Yeah, I started, it was Sunday morning that I found the deck, and I've probably been the most annoying about it in the Discord, because that's all I've been talking about in the Discord for the last couple of days. And I found it on Sunday morning. I was at 7K, and I'm at 1,300 as of tonight. So
nice.
I stopped. I was going, I think I probably could get myself in the top 1,000 if I did not have just like a series of like bad days, like outside of the game between like my last stream and tonight. Like Tuesday, I had to go into work early. We had like this massive presentation for like the big boss. And then I had to drive immediately after that to go to the dentist. And I knew I was getting fillings. I did not know that I was getting fillings on opposite sides of my mouth. So like upper left and lower right at the same time. So I was just like completely numb, and I was just like, they were fairly deep fillings, and I was just like not focusing at all. And then I still was playing a little bit, and then I got myself into like, I don't know, like 2,000 or something like that, but I just wasn't. I didn't play much because I knew that I wasn't feeling great. I wasn't playing good Hearthstone. So I figured, okay, well, Wednesday night, I'll be okay. I get out of work normal time. I get to my car, and I'm about to drive out of the lot, and my side view mirror is hanging off of my car. Because somebody apparently just hit, like, I parked it in the commuter rail lot, and somebody hit into it and just left. So I ended up spending a half an hour on the phone with the insurance company from the commuter rail lot, and then had to go drive to Target to get duct tape to keep the thing on and everything else. And then I get home and I'm just exhausted, and I still played some. And then I got myself up to like 1,500. I'm like, okay, it was like 4-1 over the course of the evening. But I definitely was feeling like the last game I was playing, I was definitely like, I probably shouldn't have won this game. It was against a Relic DH who was, if I'm saying, wow, they're trading a lot, like, they're probably trading way too much. And I mean, I did get lucky. Like, they had a board of the big green men, and I was about to die, and I top decked Symphony, you draw your highest minion, and then got Sargeras and wiped it. And they ended up sinking a lot of resource. I think they played like one Silvermoon Arcanist and both Enchanters to kill the Sargeras before I could get the taunts down. And they did another couple things like that, and eventually, like, I got the burn 6 cards at the, like, when they only had 7 cards left in deck, and their last card was the Titan, And I had I had them at 4, I think, but I just had minions, and you don't really burn the opponent down. I think I used the lifesteal one already. I'm sure Drathir was already gone, and they played the Titan, and then like I guess they reduced their hand, the minions in their hand, so that they could play more big green men instead of like getting the 4 taunts. And I just like ignored them. Like they were very big and they had lifesteal because of the Titan, but it didn't matter because they were dead. so but I was like, I knew that I kind of caught a break with that game, and then I played a couple more games. I played like 2 more games at lunch today and won them both, but it was close, and I got myself to 1300. I'm like, okay, I'm just camping, I'm good. But I've been I also opened up Magic Arena for like the first time in forever, because I tuned into Amazonian stream just like randomly because nobody else who I was watching was on. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch a little Magic, and they're doing the Arena Cube draft now. So they have like, yeah, so it's like 4,000 gold in game that, and they have like there are moxes and all kinds of like fancy stuff that you can play with. So I did a little bit of reading, and they're like, well, if white is open and you get the aggressive half of the white set, just draft white weenies. And I got offered some, I don't even remember what it was. I couldn't even tell you what the card names are. But I got offered an aggressive looking white card as my rare in the first pack, and I just drafted all white, and I went 7-1. And then immediately like, okay, that's it. Good. I'm done. I did it. I 100% win rate. We're good. I mean, I know it's not because I lost the one game, but I guess the kids still got it. So they ended up, they did get a little bit of my money because the new pre-order for that has like a 5-headed goose as a companion. So I had to buy that.
Man, if I were not spending all of my nice stuff funds on Hearthstone,
yeah,
I would probably go in and do some Magic Draft. But we'll talk about later some of the bundles that came out. I may have bought a couple of them. I'm excited about Caverns of Time. But how about you, Magesa? How's Hearthstone been for you?
Hearthstone's been pretty good for me. I've been a little distracted this week because Baldur's Gate 3 is still not out on Mac, but I was so sad that I couldn't play it that I got 1 month of cloud gaming so that I could play it. And then its cloud saves on Steam, and so it'll transfer. It should transfer fine. Hopefully it transfers fine, because that'll be very sad if it doesn't. And been having a great time with that, with my bard. And but in Hearthstone, I played a little bit of Odin Warrior finally, a little late to that party just to get a sense of the deck, and did quite well with it actually. But that was like right after last week, I think. So it's gotten more targeted since then. I was really happy to see Control Lock, on the up and up, since I've been in that deck forum channel since the expansion launch, trying to make this work, and felt like there was something there. So people have finally found it and found a list that works, which unsurprisingly but sadly does not have Jaraxxus. And I've been playing Arcane Secret Hunter when I want to climb, which even after the nerfs still felt good. I think we'll talk more about the nerfs, but you do feel it, but you didn't even necessarily need Halderon to win before. He does help, and he still helps to have that. But it does make the curve a little more awkward. Like, you can't do Halderon on 3 into Eversong Portal on 4, which was always a really great play before. So, but I won some games with that this morning. And I also, when looking at sort of how the meta was back in the time when Caverns of Time will be set, I was not playing a lot of meta decks at the time, so I was like, what was I playing? I didn't have a deck tracker at the time. I only saved random screenshots sometimes of decks before I deleted them. So apparently I didn't do this at all in 2017, but in 2016 I did several, and they are so bad. Like, they are so much worse than I thought they were. It's like half one-ofs, not a Highlander deck, just like random one-ofs because I couldn't decide what to play. And so I would just play one of each thing. so many, like, this is a priest card that is in my collection, so I will play it in this deck. What is the win condition of this deck? I don't really know. Or some of them there is a clear win condition, but the support cards are just very strange. There was a Cthulhu priest that was just like first of all, Cthulhu priest, and second, everything around. Like I was playing like weird one-ofs of the Cthulhu cards, and then like one Holy Nova and one Excavated Evil, and at least Starseeker for some reason, and Justicar Trueheart for some reason, a single Entomb. I mean, it was just very strange. So
I mean, at least
I
would be your win con if you're not actually doing anything else proactive
if you,
throughout the entire game.
I guess that was I got fatigued at least once and decided that I needed more value in this deck.
I'm really bummed they didn't rework the Golden Monkey for this Caverns of Time thing, because it's just so unplayably bad, and they made these cool signature arts. And while the Elise one is great, you'll never get to play her because, like, why? Why would you do that to yourself? And if they're not doing it now, I don't know when they would rework at least to be playable. So
I mean,
Yeah,
they left Patches
that's-
alone, so, and they gave him great signature art, so I guess he's still good though. I don't know.
Patches is fine, right? Like it does what you want him to do, which is thin your deck and put another 1/1 in play. Usually he's played in like aggro druids or anything where you're like going wide quickly and buffing the board. It's like pirate decks and then aggro druid.
Well, I've had a good time with Hearthstone this past week. There's still a bunch of decks in Standard that I'm excited to play, but I'm sure I'll be checking out Twist a lot this coming week. But like I haven't tried the Fatigue Implock yet, and I want to try that. And there's just a lot going on in the format. But we should probably talk about the news.
Well, I don't know, Edel, did you want to talk about your
Oh, that's
anything
right,
else? Because
sorry.
you just
I'm
said
cutting ahead.
that you were playing Warlock, and then I got all excited and.
Yeah, well, I haven't just been playing Control Warlock. I also was like, hey, this is a little slow for my tastes at present. And so, actually, I think it started with I ran into an Imp Warlock that was just hella greedy. And I was like, what is this? What's happening? Why do they have these things? And I was like, all right, I'll try it. And I just made my own thing. I don't think it was like their list, but I made an Imp Warlock where you just also have Sargeras and Drathir and Symphony. The Symphony is like the least weird of these things.
I mean, Sargeras isn't that weird, right? Because I mean, you still have imp like synergies with the imps that come out of the portal.
Right, so that's the thing. Like, since it summons imps, you actually like still get this thing going. So what results is like, okay, sometimes you miss your early curve because you're not running things like the 1/3 taunt demon, the Voidwalker, right? You're not running tour guides. So you're missing sometimes that ability to like really hit the ground running, but you still have that powerful mid game of, you know, the fatigue stuff that summons a whole bunch of imps. Like you've got all these board in a box things, and a huge card draw engine with just like Fiendish Circle plus Impending Catastrophe. So you've got all these aggressive tools, and then sometimes you just pull a Sargeras out of the hat and throw that down early. You know, you get that same high roll from Symphony that you do in the control deck sometimes, and that can be really overwhelming, especially, you know, against a control warrior, right? So you can still be very favored in that matchup because if you can't kill them fast enough, you know, they're focused on controlling all your stuff, and then you're like, hey, look, Sargeras taunts, good luck. And I think you're generally better positioned against things like Priest, assuming they don't identity theft your Sargeras, which did happen, and that was upsetting. But yeah, you can Drathier reverb because I'm running double reverb. It seems like the way to beat Mech Rogue. And it just, I like decks that feel well rounded like that, where you've got some nice, early mid game and then some kind of late game engine that gives you a shot when normally an aggro deck wouldn't have one. So that's been cool. And then I also haven't gotten enough games to really test it out, but I built a version of Totem Shaman that uses the Titan to draw Doomhammer and the give your hero 3 attack and make a 3/3 rush.
Turn the Tides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So basically it's just like you can Titan the way you usually do if you need that clear or something, but also you can just Titan draw and pretty much guaranteed get Doomhammer plus the Turn the Tides. I think the other Overload card I have is the Draw 2, which is also fine.
Yeah.
So that just gives you potential off-board damage that a Totem Shaman wouldn't normally have access to. And so I'm doing that instead of Magatha, and so that's pretty cool. And, people aren't playing things like Implock or Totem Shaman, but aggro's good right now.
There's a lot of slow stuff. And I like what you're saying about like the Implock is kind of what drew me to this Control Warlock too, where it's like I get to play a control deck, but I don't have to play Renathal. And I actually get to like do some things and proactively have like a game plan that doesn't always involve just pure attrition, right? Like sometimes it's pure attrition. Like against a Mech Rogue, it certainly is, but like against some decks, it doesn't have to be pure attrition. Like I can pressure, and then you do have burst with like the 6 damage lifesteal, Symphony movement, or you have Drathier reverb, or just like endless waves of imps. So you do get some damage, and you get to kind of flip the switch in a way that's a little bit less all in than like the 30 card warrior, because the 40 card warriors are very slow, and like you can get there, and you do have the Odin if you sometimes you just get it on 8 and you find it, but with a 40 card deck you're less likely to, and it's not as all in on it. But the 30 card warriors are basically just like combo decks at this point. Like they're just all in on like From the Depths and just like find Odin ASAP and start like jamming armor cards and like ignore everything else. And that's fine, but like when you don't get to do that, it just kind of feels like meh.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the turn 6 Odins just don't feel fair.
I mean, unless you also respond to that with a turn 6 Sargeras. So...
I mean, I suppose, but yeah, it's an interesting meta, and one of the things that people have been doing to counter Warrior and things like the Control Warlock that people have done to counter Warrior has been this like Moonbeam Druid.
Yes, I ran into Donkey playing that. Yeah,
but it's basically a bunch of crappy 2-mana spell damage minions that you revive with Unending Swarm, and because of the Lifebinder's Blessing that you can use to discount your hand, that's how this deck has resurged. So you get a whole bunch of stuff in your hand, you discount the whole hand, you bring back all the crappy 2-mana spell damage minions, and it's build your own Malagos. And it also runs the Howling Mine.
Funnel Cake?
No.
Oh, Due Process? Howling Mine. Wow. That's a throwback. Holy smokes.
It is a Howling Mine. Yeah, Due Process, where you both draw an extra card on your turns, and that is too much draw for many of the slower decks to handle, so you end up burning stuff, right? And that to some extent includes Warrior. And so while people are trying to throw stuff out of their hand, you've just got this draw engine going that you then build up to killing them very quickly. But that's part of why I decided to switch to things like Totem Shaman and Implock, because you just obliterate a Due Process deck when you're playing aggro.
Yeah. And they don't really have any like defensive capabilities. Like a lot of the builds, maybe they've gotten refined, but they're kind of all in on the combo. And I've found some success even with the control decks by just assuming that whoever's piloting it is not Donkey and does not actually know how to play it. and just hit them in the face and pressure them and make them sweat. And a lot, like, it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you can't outweight it. I was playing a friendly against Grumpy Monk, who's in our Discord, and burned both of his moonbeams with Symphony of Sins.
Yeah.
And he still killed me with other damage spells that he had gotten from other ways. So even though I was at full. So there are, but there's not a lot of defensive stuff here. Like, I'm looking at Donkey's latest build. He's got Rake, but not a whole lot else.
Rake is a good
Roots.
card, but it's
Rake
not
is a good card.
It's not an AoE. Like,
there's only
if,
two of them, and
if the deck had Defile, it would have a shot against aggro. But Druid has no Scales of Onyxia, nothing like that. The Otters are not good enough, so there's nothing really to keep the Druid alive versus aggro. But as you say, even without the Moonbeams, if they're able to Solar plus, that choose one damage spell, it's enough.
Oh,
Solar
no, not
being
natural
back
causes.
is nuts.
Living Roots.
Yeah. And they're also
Solar
playing
Eclipse does so
Funnel
much
Cake.
work.
Not in all the lists, but in
Mhm.
some of the more recent lists. So in case you don't have that big discount, you can still get some extra mana back and do it a little earlier. But yeah, that if you run into this, you're facing a druid and it's not a drum druid, just kill them. That's my advice.
And probably don't even bother killing the spell damage minions, because they're just going to resurrect them anyway, unless they're getting they're starting to accumulate a mass. But if they have one or two on board, it's probably fine to just ignore them and hit them in the face, unless you have something that's if you have a drain soul and you have 2 mana left over, fine, kill the thing. But they can just solar the Unending Swarm to get even more of them back sometimes. So, and it's just, if that's mana that you're spending to not hit them in the face and develop threats, then you're kind of wasting time that way, because they're not killing you with one spell damage minion, and they want the spell damage minions to die ultimately.
I mean, the reason to kill them is just to dictate the trades yourself, right? Because the spell damage does affect Rake, and sometimes they can use an earlier Moonbeam to clear your stuff. So if you're protecting something, you can leave it, but or you can kill it. But otherwise, just go face.
Yes. Yeah. And Donkey's pointing out that as Priest and Warlock, remember that your Titan poofs minions and doesn't put them in the res pool, which is important.
Oh, that is important. Yeah.
That
I guess
frustrating, Donkey.
I mean, I guess you could always put you could always put Primordial Wave in your Totem Shaman if you weren't just killing them on turn 5 anyway. So. All right. Well, I guess we should. But since we've already referenced the Hunter changes, I guess we should probably get around to talking about those. So let's do that. All right, so we got a surprise patch of 27.2.2 on Wednesday, which is not the day that we expect to get a balance patch, but here we are. We got a teaser on Tuesday of standard and battlegrounds changes, and all of the standard changes were Hunter cards, because even after the last set of nerfs, Hound Hunter and Arcane Hunter were still number 1 and number 2 on the tier list. So we got a dev comment when we made our last round of changes. We knew this balance window was coming soon, so we took a lighter touch on Hunter. Now that we've seen the results of our last changes, we're happy with how the meta is shaping up, but it's clear that we need to give Hunter a bit more of an adjustment to give other classes some room to breathe. Hunter has 2 decks that we're targeting with these changes: Arcane Hunter and Hound Hunter. Haldoran is a card we previously buffed to give the Arcane package a chance to shine. We're happy with our prior change to the effect, but we just need to adjust the number slightly to keep the power in line. For Hound Hunter, we wanted to hit the deck's early game and its explosive endgame. The adjustment to Faithful Companion should cut down on the finishing potential, while also letting the deck operate on another axis with more interesting late game decisions. So, the first change that we had was the Fox Spirit Wild Seed, which is the only Wild Seed that has now dodged a nerf, because they've already nerfed the bear and the stag. So the Fox
Yeah.
is the only one that remained untouched from when Nathria came out. And
The
that is
stag got nerfed twice.
so that is going from 3 attack to 2 attack. Haldoran is going from a 3 mana 3/4 to a 4 mana 4/4. And Faithful Companions is the one that, if you're reading it quickly, seems like it's a lot worse than it is. So it's going from discover the Mana Thirst is the only thing that's changing. So the Mana Thirst used to say also summon a copy of it, and now it says Mana Thirst 10, summon a beast from your hand. So the fact that the word also went away might have been a little bit confusing. It was to me, because I thought that was replacing the original effect. It is not. So what the card does now is you still summon a beast from you just still discover a beast from your deck and you summon it. And then you summon a beast from your hand, I believe at random. So of the beasts that are in your hand, one of them will come out onto the board. So you still will get, assuming that you have one in your hand, you still will get 2 beasts on board, but they're not going to be 2 of the same beast unless that's something that's non-legendary. So you could get 2 hound hunters. Like I'm calling it the name of the deck now. You could get 2 hollow hounds on the board if you have one in hand and one in deck, but you will not get 2 crushes unless you had done something like a selective breeder earlier in the game, and you have 1 crush in hand and then 1 crush in deck, because selective breeder is a copy. So that's the only way for you to get 2 crushes out now, is for you discover the crush from your deck and then have a crush in hand from selective breeder.
This is the one of these changes that I don't really like as much. I do get it, and like why they came to this conclusion, because it kind of was like the Hound Hunters had this kind of strong power level at every point in the game, right? Like they could have the steamroll early game. They had really solid mid game with lots of great sixes, Agrimar, Quel'Thalas, and the Colossal. And then when you got to turn 10, you just died. If they played Lorthamarthur on, or even sometimes without, Faithful Companions summoning 2 crushes would kill you as long as they hadn't drawn it. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because now it's less bad if you draw Crush, because you can pull it out of the hand. So that's cool. But I think it's just because I did like those games where you got to do the 32 damage crushes. But I'll have to play with this a bunch to sort of see how I feel about its new state, because I don't know, something about it, this was not exactly what I expected in a change. I thought maybe this card would be going up 1 or even 2 mana. So maybe like you couldn't hero power in the same turn or something like that, but it still largely did the same thing. This is like, it's such a weird change for how we're used to.
Yeah, I thought it was going to, like when you got the Mana Thirst, that it was just going to discover a copy of a beast in your deck and leave the original one in. I thought that was what they were going to do. Just so that you didn't actually use that up and you could still selective breeder it or whatever. But I mean, the 32 damage, especially speaking as a control player, it was a lot, and it was just not fun to face that deck, because you knew it was going to be a 20-minute game that you were just eventually going to lose in the end unless they drew poorly. So somebody was just going to feel awful for the entire game, right?
Uh-huh.
So I do, and I think that you could probably still build a version of this deck, but maybe you do it without Renathal now, because like Renathal, one of the main, I'm not the only reason you were running Renathal, but one of the main reasons you ran Renathal was to keep from drawing the crush. Right, and now
Right.
It doesn't matter. So unless you're really trying to high roll like the selective breeder line, which is a lot harder to pull off, but if you're not doing that, then it doesn't matter when you draw the crush or not, because you'll still get it summoned. So maybe then you're just able to make this a 30 card build and kind of tighten it up and stop playing some of the bad cards or whatever. Not that it really had that many bad cards to begin with, but I mean,
So
people were pulling like Barrel of Monkeys out for like Speaker Stompers to make good matchups even more good. So
it still does both, right? You pull a minion from your deck and from your hand
Yes.
with the Mana Thirst? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean,
it's not an instead.
I think it depends on how we feel about the fact that Hunter had this 32 damage that was pretty likely to happen unless they had drawn the Crush, and to have that depend on whether they had drawn their patches didn't feel great. So I like that they addressed that patches effect. And as someone who was sometimes playing a slower deck, and it could be frustrating that you couldn't really focus on killing the Hunter because they were putting so much pressure, and then you succeed in turning the corner, and then you're just dead. But it's also, that's not the only... I'm not someone who's against OTKs on principle, so I also understand the frustration of people who were playing a lot of this deck, that it takes away that sort of huge endgame burst. It does still put a lot of value on the board and pull things out. It also makes, I think there might be some sort of 30 card big beast deck. You don't have to curate your list necessarily as much if you're not totally depending on getting Crush. You could even run like Banjosaur. I don't know if that's good, but someone mentioned this in the Discord, that you're no longer as disincentivized from running it. Because before it had this weird synergy of like it went against what you were trying to do with Faithful Companions, and now it doesn't as much. I don't know that we're doing this, but I thought that was, if we end up playing Banjosaur, maybe it becomes good and I eat my words and I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. But I wouldn't be sorry to see Banjosaur come out onto the board.
I forget where I saw it, that somebody was asking, well, what do we need to do to buff Banjosaur? What can we do to buff Banjosaur? And somebody else said bigger arms. So, but yeah, I think that even it even felt bad, like when you're not playing like a control deck, but just like if you get down to below 16, right, against the Hound Hunter, you're just gonna die, right? Like even as like another tempo deck, like you're just gonna die if you're below 16, and that felt bad. So at least like bringing that down to 8, like fine, they can have 8 burst. They can, I mean, they're probably not going to use that for lethal because they could just play the Crush a turn earlier. But if they need a big swing turn, then they can use it for a big swing turn. But it's not going to be a finisher, right? So that's, and again, this is the problem, was that the deck was too good in all phases of the game. Right, it was very good early because of the secret package. There's a Freudian slip for you. Because of the secret package early and the bananas and everything else early. It was very good into the mid game because you had the Hollow Hound to reload, and then you had this explosive end game. And like the deck should have one phase of the game where you can outclass it, and it really just didn't, even after the other nerfs. So I think that this is a fair change, and I think it's still playable, but you're just going to change the way you build the deck, and anything that's going to result in fewer Renathals being played is probably a good thing overall.
Yeah, I mean, generally with changes we've seen in Hunter, they're trying to have less of that when you are incentivized to not draw a card, because that's just generally when the design is that way. It feels bad to be incentivized to not draw a card.
Yeah.
So I do like that it at least does that. Also, Hydralisk in chat says, FYI, Banjosaur just killed me. So...
I guess his arms did get bigger. Good for him. I mean, and the Fox is a big deal too, because like going from 3 to 2, it's a big break point. Like you're able to kill off things like an Armor Vendor with 3 attack, where now you can't, right? Like a lot of the smaller early game minions that you'd be able to, because this is coming out usually on 3 with Wild Spirits. A lot of the minions that are coming out on turn 2 will often have 3 health, and not being able to just clear that off effectively for free and then still have something else coming out behind it, either with a 2/2 alongside it the prior turn, or getting a bear or a stag with it the next turn or the turn after. that feels fairer. It's just going to give it a little bit less clearing ability, and maybe have to use multiple cards or have to use a banana with it in order to fight for board, where that banana can't go on the other minion that was already on board that gets to hit you in the face. So I think that's probably the most significant. I mean, the Faithful Companions burst ending was relevant sometimes, but you saw a lot more foxes than you did Faithful Companions played in Hunter, in Hound Hunter specifically.
Yeah, this feels. I haven't played yet with the 2/1 foxes or seen it since the changes went live yesterday. It definitely feels like a pretty significant hit to that board control from the wild seeds, and I wonder if we might even see the wild seeds being cut. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because you're still getting a couple of minions pretty quickly. The other wild seeds, even in their nerfed states, are pretty powerful, and it's still a rush, but 2 is a big difference from 3 in a rusher.
Yeah, I mean, it cleared pretty much any early game thing at 3-1. And now, as you were saying, Wicked, it's a lot less likely to clear, and also a lot less threatening if you're just in a position where you can't clear the 3-1, right? There were times where they would, maybe get a taunt off of the 2/2 Wild Seed and then play Wild Spirits and activate that taunt, and then now have this 3/1 Fox hiding behind it. And you're like, well, great. Now I can't trade into that 3/1 and it's just going to murder me. And yeah, it's definitely a big hit, but Wild Seeds have just been so strong for so long.
For a year. Yeah.
Yeah. That I'm pretty okay with Fox getting toned down as well.
Yeah. And Megisa, anything, since you've been playing with it most recently, anything else you have to say about the Haldoran change? You already kind of talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah, I'm glad that they didn't revert again, because it made it so these games where Haldoran was just useless, where you wouldn't have wanted to play Trinket Trackers because you wouldn't have wanted to draw your 1 mana arcane spells until after you drew Haldoran. And so I'm really glad they didn't revert that. And so you still have the full power. I expect, I think it's still a good card in the deck, but it does tone down the really aggressive curve, and it becomes more of boosting the later game rather than being part of, killing on turn 5 or turn 6. So I think it makes sense, especially since secret, especially if you're hitting Hound Hunter with 2 cards in, I think, even more significant ways. You don't want to leave Secret Hunter up without touching it, and Haldoran was really an outlier card in that deck, but this is a way that I think doesn't kill the deck, and neither did the Costume Singer. You feel both of them for sure, but I was still having a good win rate with Arcane Secret Hunter today, so I don't expect to see it go away necessarily, although probably toned down a little bit in terms of play rate, which is not bad.
yeah, it does seem like it's the more of a nudge than how it's like Hound Hunter's a deck that existed last meta, like that needs to take a big step back, and Arcane Hunter was too strong and just needed to have the edges shaved off, is more what it felt like.
Yeah.
So on top of that, there was a scenario with the Caverns of Time patch, or the 27.2 patch rather, where we got a whole bunch of wild cards that were buffed as part of Caverns of Time. And turns out we got some other cards that were not part of Caverns of Time that were also buffed, but weren't announced. And this sounds like it was a mistake. There was so there were there were a bunch of cards that were buffed. There were some that they reverted as part of this hotfix that launched this week, and they decided to leave some of them in. So they had buffed the damage on Dragon's Breath, Swipe, and Glaivezuka, and those all just got pulled back in this most recent patch. But there were 3 that they left, which are Timberwolf, Jinyu Waterspeaker, and Firelands Portal. Firelands Portal, by the way, is in core, so that's a standard change as well. I actually saw that a couple times when I was playing Fiddlefire Imps in the Control Warlock. And I mean, you're still paying 7, so it feels fairish, but so Timberwolf which is a 1-mana 1, it was a 1-mana 1/1 beast for Hunter, and that your other beasts have +1 attack, and now it's a 1/2, which is fair. I mean, Timberwolf is most of the relevant 1/1s have gotten buffed to 1/2s. That doesn't seem particularly out of line.
Yeah, I mean, not dying to half the hero powers is nice.
Yes. Jinyu Waterspeaker was from Gadgetzan. It is a shaman minion. It was 3/6, and now it's 4/6 to 4 mana. Now 4/6 with Battle Cry, Restore 6 health, Overload 1. That's a card that did see some play in some of the slower shaman decks. So that's something that that does also feel kind of fair. Like 4 mana 3/6, even with the big Battle Cry, given the state of the other cards it's competing against, I think giving an extra attack isn't the worst thing in the world. And then Firelands Portal is a mage spell from Karazhan. It costs 7 mana. It was deal 5 damage, summon a random 5-cost minion, and now it is deal 6 damage and summon a random 6-cost minion. So it's buffing both the damage and the cost of the minion that's coming out. It still costs 7 to do that. So, but at least you're getting a little bit better quality minion, and you're getting more damage out of it. So, and you can, when you get that off your Fiddlefire Imp, you'll get a 6-drop down. So that's good for you. So as far as Battlegrounds is concerned, we're not going to go through all the changes, despite Sway coming on last week and teaching us everything we know. We are not a Battleground show, but we will talk about the stuff that you're more likely to notice. The Denathrius Anima Reserves anomaly, which just said all heroes are Sire Denathrius, now says quests and rewards are in this game, all heroes are Sire Denathrius. So it's actually giving you 2 quests now to every player in the game instead of just the one. So you get to pick one. Every player will get to pick one on turn 1, one on turn 4. So that's a little bit of a buff. I mean, it's a buff in terms of it probably makes those games a little bit more fun to getting to choose both quests.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people complain that it didn't feel like super interesting. Like, oh, okay, everyone's just playing this one hero that has a quest. But the thing that was always exciting about Denathrius was that you got 2 quests, right? As opposed to everyone else getting 1. So, yeah, more exciting to, like, sort of have a little bit of quests that happen sometimes, even if they're not every game.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Plus, you have to pick that quest when you don't have any idea of even what you're going to be offered in the shop yet. Right, so you get the second quest when you have a little bit of direction to see what you're going to do, because you could just guess completely wrong on the first quest and then end up, getting railroaded down a line you don't want to go down. So.
Well, and I always thought it was nice to be able to take like one quest that's sort of your long-term plan and another one that you can activate quickly to like get you there, right?
Yeah. So also sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay. There's also the friends and family discount off of the Darkmoon prize that used to say for the rest of the game, minions in the tavern cost 1 less. And now it says for the rest of the game, the minions in the tavern cost 2. I presume this is a Millhouse Manastorm adjustment, because when that happens in your Millhouse, then things get very silly very quickly. So
I mean, I think also sometimes people would just get multiple instances and then have like free minions in the shop or something.
Yeah, well, because there's the one anomaly where you get Darkmoon prizes instead of triple rewards.
Right.
So you could just get a whole bunch of these and all of a sudden everything's free. So yeah, that would happen. They reduced the anomalies of the frequency of some anomalies. I don't know what Might of Khazgaroth or Fortitude of Khazgaroth or Finicky Hourglass is, but I know what Oops All is, and I'm glad to see less of that. So
Yeah, me too.
And you're going to see more of Prudence of Amethyst when shifting discs, which I think is the one where... Is that the one where everybody's Master Wen? I've never actually seen that one, and I don't know what the names are, but bringing the buddies is pretty self-explanatory, and then a fair reward, which I think is one of the ticket ones. So...
And I think Might and Fortitude are the ones where you mirror either health for Fortitude or attack for Might, in terms of whatever is the highest on your right and left will
yeah.
copy
I did
each other.
get those a bunch, and I haven't seen them. I've actually been playing a fair amount of Battlegrounds since last week. I got myself up to like 3,500 over the last week because I haven't been queuing standard because I've been afraid to because I've been too tired. So there's a bunch of minion updates. We're not going to go through all of those. You can feel free to read those in the patch notes, but just know that there are a number of patch notes, and they made some updates to the minion pool as well. Razor Gore, Baby Crush, Dynamic Duo, and Inventomatic were removed from the minion pool. Inventomatic just got added because that was a Titans card that they just put in as part of the new pool, so that's already getting removed. And the minions that have been returned to the minion pool are General Dracasath, which I think is the dragon that gives you a battle cry that gives you a dragon that gives something 5+5 attack or something like that.
Mhm.
Tavern Tempest, which is the elemental that gives you a random elemental, Bonker, and Kaboombot. So they're taking one of each out for these tribes or minion types and then putting one in. So just be aware of all those when you're playing Battlegrounds. Don't be surprised. We also got some duels updates. Again, I haven't even been playing duels all that much lately, so I couldn't even really tell you what these things are doing. But other than all the mini adjustments, Helya and Odin have been banned from initial deck building. So those were probably too oppressive and or fun, depending on your point of view. So those are out now. So as far as bug fixes that we got in this patch, again, this is a small server-side patch, so we weren't going to get too many bug fixes, but they did revert the changes to Glaivezuka, Swipe, and Dragon's Breath. They fixed a bug where Don Honcho was buffed too much. He was buffed to 5/6 instead of 5/5. So for one Don Honcho fan out there, you got your moment of glory, and now that's gone, and I'm sorry. They updated Wormweaver's text box to match updated Mana Orb stats because Wormweaver, I think it was a spell burst that would summon two mana worms, but it actually specified 1/2 mana worms, and since
sure.
Mana Worm got buffed to 1/3, now those are 1/3 mana worms. I think it was giving you the right card, but it wasn't saying it on the text box. So they fixed a bug where Captain Sanders, which is the tier 7 pirate who with Battlecry make a minion golden, was in the Thorum Stormlord hero power pool in games where the Golden Arena anomaly was active. So that's just kind of a vanilla 5/4 in that case. So that's a good change. They fixed the bug where Golden Leeching Hellhound costs more than 3 health. When you goldened, it's a minion that costs 3 health when you buy it instead of gold. When you goldened it, when it was golden in the shop, it would cost 6 health. And now it only costs 3. And in duels, Neptulon will no longer be generated by Chaos Storm. I don't know what that means, but it sounds scary. So I'm glad that that's not happening. So that's that as far as the patch notes are concerned. And we also we talked about the accidental charge changes. There was a thread from Celestalon about Twist MMR because that is happening tomorrow. As we're recording this, Twist is going to start as of server reset time in whatever your local server is. So as we're recording this, APAC and EMEA have already, APAC and EU have already gotten their gotten Twist to start. We're still waiting in NA until 3 o'clock Eastern, midnight Pacific. But there was a thread from Celestalon talking about changes to MMR, and the actual changes that instead of just using whatever your wild MMR was or whatever your twist MMR was, they're going to look at your wild, standard, and twist MMR and take the highest of the three. And regardless of what your MMR, how high your MMR is, the highest you will start with is a 9-star multiplier. So if you were legend in twist last season, when the beta ended, you will start with a 9-star multiplier. So that should help both with the queue times and with not clumping everyone together and having legend caliber players beating up on people who play once in a blue moon. That'll be a good thing.
One thing to note for this is it is not including, so your star bonus may be a little bit different than you think because it's copying the MMR, not the star bonus. Sometimes you might have a star bonus that's a little bit, there's a minimum star bonus for certain rank floors. So you may end up with but this is not taking that into account. So you may end up with a lower star bonus or a higher star bonus than your rank might indicate. And normally in standard, you never end up with a star bonus lower than you would think. Sometimes it's higher, but now it could also be lower because it's just the straight hidden MMR, not the star bonus that you see.
Yeah. So if you're the kind of person who hits Diamond 5 and then that's your signal to start playing meme decks and lose every game from then until the end of the season, your star multiplier may not be 9. It may be significantly lower than that because you're still reducing your MMR. There's just a floor on what your star multiplier is going to be. So there were some people who had gotten to legend in wild when the beta season started and started with a 2x multiplier because as soon as they hit legend, they just played meme decks all the way down and then saw how many people were in legend and wild. and that's what, and your MMR, it doesn't get shown, it doesn't show you losing those stars, but you're losing those stars, but you would get them back in the next wild season because you have a floor and you have a minimum that you get by getting to legend. That is not being taken into account here. So beware if you do let your memes be dreams, there might be a cost to that in twist.
On the other hand, you get to face opponents who are at a lower star multiplier also, so there is a silver lining to that.
Yep. So there was also another thread from Celestalon because Caverns of Time, the packs just launched today as we're recording this. And there were some things that were coming out around pack openings because, again, you're not supposed to get copies of cards that you already own, the buffed cards that you already own. But people were reporting that they were seeing that. So he did confirm that duplicate protection does seem to be working correctly. If you're getting duplicates of old cards that you already have, it's because you already got all of the new cards at that rarity, which is a thing that, happens normally in pack openings. However, there is an issue with Collection Manager where some new cards aren't showing up. If you have 2 old copies and 1 new copy, the 1 new copy doesn't show up. They're working on getting that fixed ASAP. There's also an issue where the old copies of cards that are in Caverns are not usable in duels, but they should be. So they're working on that as well. So I presume if the whole set is in, then you'd be able to use it in duels. But if it's a card from a set that's not legal in duels, but it's in Caverns of Time, you should still be able to use it. So that's that. And we also, let me go back to the list. So that's all that. There was also an issue briefly where if you had a signature Halderon Brightwing, you wouldn't get any dust for it. If you dusted it, it would just not do anything. They've fixed that on the server, so you can do that now if you want to. They're going to roll out a separate patch to basically heal up the dust totals for everyone who was affected by that. So, along with the along with the new patch, we have new bundles. There is a Diamond Murazan bundle with 10 golden Caverns of Time packs for 5,000 runestones or $50. That appears to be the only pure Caverns of Time bundle that there is. There's also this Early Wonders bundle that I believe is this. I'm not sure which packs these are. It looks like maybe it's just, is that GVG Grand Tournament and then Caverns? Is that what that is?
Yeah, so it's 20 Caverns, 20 Grand Tournament, and 20 GVG with one random signature legendary from Caverns of Time. So one of
Right.
those that they announced in the Caverns of Time announcement blog. And they
Yeah.
also have one that is the same thing except for instead of Grand Tournament and GVG, it's Whispers of the Old Gods and Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. So that's also 20 Caverns, 20 Gadgetzan, 20 Old Gods, and one random signature legendary from Caverns of Time. And each of those are 4,000 runestones or $40 US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
those are the only sets you could be able to buy packs of, because the other ones were all adventures.
Right. And yeah, so I picked up the Early Wonders bundle because in terms of stuff I was missing the most of, it was Grand Tournament and GVG. So like I dusted my Anubarak at some point
Oh
for
no.
Rogue, right? and you know, that's a much better card now. So I picked like that and the Caverns bundle up. I'm a little surprised not to see like a more specific, like big Caverns of Time
Yeah.
bundle. You know, something that's like a 50 Caverns packs. But I guess, like at the same time, a bunch of them are cards from these sets. I don't know. It's sort of like if you had everything and just wanted Caverns, the only option you have is to get the golden packs, which is the Caverns of Time bundle. Rank 1 is this diamond card and then 10 golden packs. So
Well, if you have everything and you only want the new Caverns cards, that's only what, like 34 new cards?
yeah,
It's like buying a mini set, right?
kind of, but like I don't know, it's $50 for the diamond and the 10 golden Caverns packs. So like I guess you just sort of go, well, I'd rather get 20 Caverns packs and sort of tangentially pick up either the GVG Grand Tournament or Whispers and Gadgetzan. Like there's, I would have expected there to be something that was just like, you know, 30 Caverns of Time packs or something like that.
I did too, and I didn't even really look at these other bundles because it's like I don't have everything from Whispers and Gadgetzan even. Like I was still when I was still building up my collection, but also like I've crafted everything I really want from those sets for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's not like if I haven't gotten it by now, I know that, you know, and I may change my tune when I actually start building Twistex, but also I've got enough dust to just craft what I want to get and not open packs. The signature would be the reason to do it. Like the Aya signature is something that I would very much be interested in, but
yeah,
but you know, whatever. It's I'll save it for some priest portrait they come out with in a couple months or something.
I mean, this seems like something that's like well targeted for somebody like me who has about half of like TGT and half of GVG, and so that would probably be enough to help fill that out. But I also am sitting on a big surplus of dust because I had so many cards from the Titans expansion,
right?
Since I went whale on that for the first time, so I think I'm going to start building Twistex and see whether I'm feeling a pinch on that before I decide whether to buy this bundle. But if you're in a situation where you do have some of the collection but not a critical mass, I could see this being potentially a bundle that you would be interested in.
It's an option if you want it.
Yeah, I picked up the Caverns of Time bundle and the Early Wonders bundle because between the Kraken and Early I had more gaps when it came to TGT and DVG, but also mostly I dig the signatures, and so I did get Bran's signature, which one day everyone will lament that Bran is back in core. It's not going to be anytime soon, I expect, but one day I assume Bran will be
We've
back
had
in
that
core.
day. I don't want that day to come back. I've lived through that day.
But for now, I mean, Bran is great in Cthulhu decks, so if I'm trying out, the buffed Cthulhu stuff in Twist, I should get some good use out of Bran.
Bran Doomcaller, just like the good old days.
Yeah, well, I've been wanting to do Cthulhu Rogue now that the one card specific to them costs 6 instead of 9 to kill a minion and gain its stats. So yeah, I was bummed I didn't get any of the old god signatures. I got Bran and Finley, but they're really cool art, and I'm excited to dive into this twist because it'll be very nostalgic. Although, while Manowyrm is back, Sorcerer's Apprentice is not. So it will be very weird for me trying to build mage decks. They will not quite be the same.
Yeah, you're not going to really be able to go off with Flamewaker the same way.
You can't go off with Flamewaker the same way. You can't go like Ronin to get your arcane bolts and then go Apprentice Antonidas and just play, all the arcane bolts on 9 for 3 fireballs. Yeah.
How are you going to get Yogg to cast 30, 40 spells without Sorcerer's Apprentice? I mean, what's even the point of living at that point?
Yeah.
So there's also some golden. There's a golden wild bundle and a regular wild bundle that you can buy. There's also bundles of the battle ready decks, and you can buy the decks individually for ranging from 1,000 to 3,200 gold. So Pirate Rogue and Jade Shaman are both 1,000, and then Jade Druid, Reno Priest, Discard Warlock, and Cthulhu Warrior are all 3,200 apiece. So those are more, they have more legendaries in them typically than the Jade Shaman and Pirate Rogue and Jade Shaman are going to be kind of more lower to the ground aggro decks. Jade Shaman is probably more mid-range, but yeah, so those are available to you as well. And we do have the 6 list that you can buy. Thanks to Rabobson for putting those on Twitter right before we were recording the show. So we have those. There's a Jade Druid. Looks like they look like reasonable versions of the decks too. I'm not, they're definitely working in some of the new cards, and like the Cthulhu Warrior doesn't run the Bran Thaurissan. It does have Thaurissan, but it doesn't have the Bran Doomcaller combo. It does have Bran, but no Doomcaller, which was the Doomcaller was the card that shuffled the Cthulhu back into your deck. So you would play your Cthulhu and kill it, and then you'd Thaurissan, get a Thaurissan tick on at least one of Bran or Doomcaller, and then you would Bran Doomcaller, shuffle 2 more back into your deck, and then do that over again. So there is a Reno Priest for those of you who are extremely ambitious. Because
it's like a Reno Dragon Priest type.
Right.
Except not entirely dragons, but it's kind of a dragon theme going on.
But it's a control priest and has Dirty Rat, so it's fine.
It's Raza, but without Shadow Reaper, right? So
yeah.
So there is no Raza.
Without like a win con. Yeah. It's I mean, I don't know. When you're running Museum Curator on purpose, I have questions, but that's neither here nor there.
But they buffed it, Wicked.
Did they?
They have those 2 new dragons. I don't know if that's supposed to the 2 new dragon legendaries.
Yeah, Soridormi and Murazond.
Yeah, Murazond, Thief of Time. So I don't know if that's supposed to help. I don't know if that's enough. Certainly, like what I've been seeing from people who know more about wild formats than I do, people are more bullish about the Jade Druid, potentially the Jade Shaman, and potentially the Cthulhu Warrior than
Yeah.
like the Disco Lock or the Reno Priest. You can always wait a few days and see what shakes out. We'll have a much better sense of these decks shortly, I'm sure,
Yeah.
in terms of how they perform.
Yep. But you can see like where the dust is going, right? Like there is one legendary in the Pirate Rogue, which is Patches. There's one in the Shaman, which is Aya. And then when you're looking at the other ones that all cost 3,200 gold, they all have 3 to 4 to sometimes 5 legendaries apiece. So that's where the gold difference is, that's fair, right? If you just want to get a cheap deck to play and start with, the Jade Shaman and the Pirate Rogue are probably fine. If you want to get a little bit more value, particularly in cards that you may not have had in Wild or that are new to Caverns, then the other decks will be a little bit more relevant. I guess the Cthulhu Warrior technically has 5, but Cthulhu you'll get just by opening up any Whispers of the Old God pack if you don't already have it. So it's really only 4 legendaries that you're getting that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise.
If you have heard tell of Jade Druid all this time and never had a chance to play it, now,
yeah,
now you can get it and experience they have endless value. Arguments.
This was not the heyday of
had.
Jade Druid though. Like this was
like
the version, like this was like the beta version of Jade Druid. It didn't really become oppressive until Frozen Throne when we got Spreading Plague. That's when Jade Druid really went to become the actual Jade Druid that we know and dislike to this day.
So if you want to be Jade Druid and not cause people as much pain, which could be a bonus or a drawback for you, depending.
I mean, what are you doing if that's what you're doing? But anyway, we're already talking about Twist, so we may as well just start talking about Twist. And let's do that.
All right. So for Dexplanations, we're going to continue talking about what to play in Twist. That's just a totally new format. You may not have been playing back in the day, and even if you were, of course, there are changes. There's been some nerfs and unnerfs that are notable. And so we wanted to look at what were the meta decks back pre-standard and at the end of the Gadget Sand meta, as well as potentially looking at some decks that have been theory crafted by people in the community for the Wonders format specifically. But why don't we start by talking about, we have here the Tempo Storm meta reports from, this is April 17th, 2016. This was the end of, or right before Standard. And talking about what the high tier decks were at the time. So the 4 tier 1 decks that they had were Zoolock, Midrange Druid, Control Warrior, and Patron Warrior. And then there was quite a few tier 2 decks. Is there anything here that is standing out to you as something that might be interesting in the Twist format?
So, I mean, I think we need to talk about this zoo because this is not the zoo that everybody remembers. This was like the golden age of zoo in this meta. This was the Gormok the Impaler zoo. So Gormok the Impaler is a 4-mana 4/4 legendary from TGT that says Battle Cry, if you have at least 4 other minions, deal 4 damage. This was actually played in this deck, and this is the only time that it was played. And then you also like this was just like go wide repeatedly, and then you had at one point I think there was what the hell, like the reliquary that like if you had 6 other minions on board, get +4/+4 was in this deck somehow. This is when we were running like Direwolf Alpha to where
Yep.
positioning actually mattered. We had Implosion, which is the 4-mana spell, deal 2 to 4 damage to a minion, summon a 1/1 imp for each damage dealt. And of course, every deck in this era had Dr. Boom in it, just because that was the card that you played. I think it'll be interesting to see if Dr. Boom would still be good enough in this twist meta, and I doubt that it will be. But you also, and then you had Enhanso Mechano, which was your finisher, and along with the Doom Guards, obvious. Oh, this one didn't even run Doom Guard, but Enhanso Mechano was a 4-mana 3/2 mech with Battle Cry. Give your other minions Wind Fury, Taunt, or Divine Shield at random. So you would just make a big board and then slam Enhanso Mechano and then hit your opponent with Wind Furied minions that were buffed by a Direwolf. So, yeah. it's
I have
When
trouble evaluating like how strong this or twist meta is going to be, because there are certain things that I remember being hella powerful, and they're still going to be quite so. I mean, the unnerfed Undertaker is definitely spooky. I think when we were discussing this, it came up that in Hunter you can go Undertaker into Coin Ball of Spiders, and that's a very large Undertaker, right? Because it's summon, so it'll get +3/+3 if you do that.
that is
I don't
quite the
know.
undertaking, yes.
Yeah, like I don't know if
Yeah.
that's exactly what you want to be doing, but there's certain things that are crazy powerful like that. But like we were saying, we've got unnerfed Mana Worm, but at the same time, Sorcerer's Apprentice isn't the same. Like there are these weird things where, while some things have been unnerfed, other things remain so. And so it's still not exactly what we remember, even besides the addition of these Cavern of Time cards.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that this meta report was after the Warsong Commander nerf. And Warsong Commander has also been restored to its former
Yes.
glory. So you could play actual Patron Warrior. Like the Patron Warrior that's in this meta report is the one. It was still okay, right? But it was more of a mid-range deck where you were trying to get like Kor'kron elites to finish your opponent off instead of just, making a big frothing berserker and immediately hitting them in the face. You kind of needed to work for it a little bit more. This is closer to like Enrage Warrior that we have in standard now, where you're using like charge minions like Kor'kron Elite and Grom to try to get over the line. So and running like the aggro warriors in this era would run Sir Finley Murgleton just to get a better hero power than Armor Up.
Yeah. Distinctly remember that. And you still might do that,
Yeah.
I am definitely excited about trying a Patron Warrior because I didn't really. Again, I wasn't playing really meta things at the time. I didn't really have a chance to try out Patron Warrior properly. I did see it in tournaments, but I'm not. I don't remember playing it very much myself. And I know there's a bunch of theory crafts that we have linked in the show notes from the State of the Wild podcast hosts, as well as some from Habu Gabu, and that includes at least one Patron Warrior with Warsong Commander. If you missed these days, Warsong Commander says whenever you summon a minion with 3 or less attack, give it charge, and Grim Patron, when it survives damage, summons another Grim Patron. So you get some Grim Patrons, you get some Whirlwind effects, you give them all charge, you ship a bunch of damage face.
I mean, usually they just died because in addition to the patrons, you would also throw down Frothing Berserker. And so you were damaging all these patrons. Yes, you had these 3/3s attacking, but also you had this Frothing that...
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd
Because you
whirlwind
could
and they'd
kill
all
the
yeah,
patrons.
right.
As long as, you'd staggered, you would get more patrons back. So you could kind of do this as much as you had damage effects and then just get a huge Frothing Berserker
Yeah.
that also had
And
charge.
you'd have like Death Bite, which is the 4 mana 4/2 weapon with Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all minions. So you'd swing once, then save the second wing for that. You had Whirlwind, which was 1 mana. You had Inner Rage, which was free. They'd be able to get trades, and you obviously had an Acolyte of Pain. You also had Unstable Ghoul that you would run in the deck, which was a 2 mana 1/3 taunt. Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all minions. So you kind of set up all these whirlwind effects to be able to maximize them, and then as long as you didn't kill off the Frothing Berserker in the process, right? So you could do like a maximum of 3 whirlwinds if you wanted the Frothing Berserker to be able to attack at the end of it. And then you just go face with it. And you also had, Grom and Boom for some additional damage, plus Kor'kron's Elites for I don't know if the Kor'kron Elite was in the original version of the list. You probably didn't even run Grom and Boom in that list just because the combo was good enough. This list is the one that they were playing at Worlds that year. I think I did play this version because I didn't have the cards for the original Patron Warrior when it was actually a thing, but I was able to cobble this version together after the nerf. It was still pretty good.
Yeah, it looks like the list from before the nerf, at least the list that I'm looking at, which comes from the State of the Wild podcast host, so I don't know if this is the same as the original list. It runs Grom, but not Dr. Boom, and not the Kor'kron.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, any version of this, we'll see what the exact best refined one is, but there was definitely a lot of versions of this list that were powerful.
Yeah, I'm going to be building all kinds of Cthulhu decks because Cthulhu going to 8, I think, is a pretty big deal for its versatility. At 10, it really had to be just, you were a super control deck. It was top of the curve, and you would probably be slow enough that you would also be running the thing to shuffle another one into your deck, right? Like that was it, and it was basically just Warrior. But at 8 mana, I feel like it now comes out early enough that maybe, whether it's in Rogue, where you drop it on curve and you shadow step it, or maybe it's, in some kind of mage deck even, right, as a curve topper, like you can potentially run like just the good ones. I think Cthulhu's Chosen giving +3/+3 now instead of +2/+2, since it was always sort of one of the better ones as a Divine Shield minion. Like that's a big deal. And then, Disciple of Cthulhu's the same, but it was always nice because it did I guess it's a 2/2 instead of a 2/1, which whatever. But
it doesn't die to a hero power at least, so that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, you can do these things, right, of like not even running that many of the Cthulhu minions, so you can still run your other strong cards. And the Cthulhu minions are now, apart from the 2 mana 2/3, all, pretty reasonably strong at this point. Again, hard to evaluate how this twist power level is going to be, but like the 4 mana 3/6 taunt, whenever this minion takes damage, give your Cthulhu +1/+1 wherever it is. That used to be 5 mana. Being 4 mana 3/6 taunt is like so much better.
Yeah, the clock on this has just really gotten faster.
And the eye stock is significant as well, to have something that benefits from you doing those buffs besides the Cthulhu being a taunt lifesteal. Like you can easily play this as like a 4 mana 7/7 taunt lifesteal, just like a few other cards.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that it doesn't only need to get buffed by the things that specifically buff Cthulhu. Like anything that hand buffs or buffs in deck, like the new Hobart Grapple Hammer will also buff Cthulhu. Right? Because now it's, if you have a weapon equipped, then you give all minions in your hand and deck +2/+2. So that will also buff Cthulhu, as long as it's like the only thing that the Cthulhu buffers do that won't do is buff the Cthulhu if the Cthulhu has died and you want to resurrect it from Doomcaller.
Right.
But
Oh, that's
other
kind
than
of
that,
cool.
yeah. So you
So
could
you can
easily
make like a hand buff Hobart deck or hand and deck buff.
you could
and
run
then...
you could run Don Honcho in your Cthulhu Warrior. I don't recommend it.
In a sense, you can kind of get double the buffs. Like, say you've got an eye stalk in hand, and so Hobart buffs your Cthulhu in deck, which gives stats to the eye stalk, and then also buffs the eye stalk in your hand. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if that will end up being a good thing, but I like that a lot. I'm very interested in playing some kind of hand buff warrior because that was just so not strong enough in its day. But now with the Knuckles being 3 mana, and then Hobart actually being a playable card to buff your minions in hand and deck, like that curve of Knuckles into Hobart is going to be just like really, really powerful.
Yeah, I'm really excited to play a Cthulhu deck that is better than my Cthulhu Priest, and just and see them taking things that, were being outclassed by the time that, this Caverns of Time is the Twist Wonders format is taking place, have those buffs, and so we'll have a different constellation of decks. It won't be the same, meta report that we have here from Tempo Storm. I am looking at the Tempo Storm report from the end of the Gadget Zan meta, which is from March 18th, 2017. And the tier 1 decks were Aggro Shaman, Reno Lock, Pirate Warrior, Midrange Shaman, and Jade Druid. And in tier 2, we had Dragon Priest, Aggro Rogue, Control Shaman, Tempo Mage, Dragon Warrior, Reno Mage, Zulok, and Miracle Rogue. Dragon Priest and Dragon Warrior were probably the best decks I played in 2017.
Yeah.
I loved Dragon Priest. I think I got to a new rank with Dragon Priest, which probably means I hit like gold 5 or something. But I remember I was very excited with that deck.
So this was the around the time that I hit Legend for the first time. Was in around when this meta report would have come out. And I think I said to you both in chat before the show, you probably would guess which one it was by me saying that you're not going to guess which one it was. But it was Aggro Shaman though. Believe it or not.
I was looking at all the aggro decks here going, which one? Aggro Shaman. So
yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about this Aggro Shaman?
Yeah, I actually had started out with Pirate Warrior, and then I ended up switching to the Aggro Shaman. This was after like the Spirit Claws nerf, which doesn't matter now anyway because you can't get a spell damage totem anyway. So Spirit Claws wouldn't be good even if it was unnerfed now. They probably could unnerf it; it wouldn't matter. But they basically Shaman was broken as of Karazhan. It was like different versions of it were just absolutely broken. And then they had to nerf it several times over the next couple months, which was unheard of back then because they went out of their way to not nerf things as much as they possibly could. So the fact they had to nerf Shaman multiple times over these 2 sets was pretty notable. But this was where it landed at the end of Gadget Zan was kind of a Jade aggro burn hybrid. So you were running a small pirate package. You would run. This one had Bloodsail Corsair. You probably just run Small Time Buccaneer now because you do have weapons, and Small Time Buccaneer's gotten unnerfed. This was after the Small Time Buccaneer nerf. But you would run a small pirate package with Bloodsail Corsair and patches, and I think sometimes they would run the one that had charge if you had a weapon. I think Bloodsail Corsair was there more as just like a tech card against the other weapon decks, especially Pirate Warrior, that were in the meta at the time. But you'd have Tunnel Trogg and Totem Golem, best friends forever. You had Flame Tongue Totems. You had Feral Spirit and Maelstrom Portal to get you early board. And then you had all the Jade cards. So Jade Claws was the weapon that would get you a Jade Golem. So it was Battlecry, summon a Jade Golem, Overload 1. for a 2-mana 2/2 weapon. So you had that. You had Jade Lightning, which was just more burn, 3 damage, summon a Jade Golem, and you would have Eye of Blackpaw as well, which would Battle Cry and Death Rattle, summon a Jade Golem. You also had Flamery Faceless, the original 4-mana 7/7, and you ran you had, just for additional burn, you had Lightning Bolt, you had Lava Burst. I believe sometimes you ran a Lava Shock, which would unlock the mana crystals, and you ran Azure Drake because every deck in this meta ran Azure Drake, because
Azure
it was
Drake
just the best
so
card.
good, you guys.
Oh, how times have changed. Our 5-mana 4/4 spell damage 1 draw card. Yeah.
But I mean, with all the burn you had in the deck, it wasn't bad. You
Yeah.
know, it just, I mean, it still drew you a card, and spell damage was relevant, and you would basically just, you know, throw minions on board, get your chip damage in, build up your Jades, hit them in the face, and then just burn over the top for the rest.
Sounds like a fun deck.
And we can play Crackle in that now, because Crackle had rotated. So Crackle's also a card that you could run in this deck now, which is a lot more damage. Crackle is probably the most infamous Shaman card in history, which is from Goblins versus Gnomes. It was a 2-mana spell with, was it Overload 1 or Overload 2? I forget. I think it was just Overload 1, but it was deal 3 to 6 damage, and it would go face. So sometimes you would just praise Yogg and throw it at face and hope it did enough. But this was back, because this was back before Shaman could have just like consistent damage spells.
Yeah, so it was always the roll of the day, and you just had to hope. And you know, there was always all those clips of somebody just hitting 6 to, you know, there would be those moments when you're at 6 and they throw a Crackle and they get 6 damage, and you're like, really, I'm dead now.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, they'd be at 6 and you'd do 5, and then they'd kill you in the next turn.
Yeah. It's only when your Crackles would do 5, your opponents would do 6. I mean, that's how it worked. That's just science. But and this also may not be as good as it was back then, because Spell Damage Totem is no longer one of the basic totems that you can get. So that made a difference with some of the burn. So, you know, that may be something to consider. Yeah.
You can run the new card.
Totally totems. Yeah.
Pay 4 mana to get all 5 totems. Yep.
That's a great deal.
They might have done that in, well, they couldn't discount it. I was going to say they might have done that in Nature Shaman pre-bio nerf, but you couldn't have discounted it enough.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
They also, this was when we had a Jade Druid in, that was a little different than the one that they have in the Battle Ready decks, it looks like, because in the Battle Ready deck they put some of the new cards in.
Yeah, they don't have Auctioneer in the Battle Ready deck, right?
I don't believe so. Let me check.
Yeah. Auctioneer, this was annoying as hell with the Auctioneer, because a lot of the cards, now remember again, this is where some of the nerfs that since then are relevant. Innervate would get you 2 mana crystals, and now it only gets you 1. And Wild Growth used to cost 2, and now it costs 3. So back then you would be able to just slam a Gadgetzan Auctioneer and just go to the town, right? And so Jade Idol is a spell for 1 mana that choose 1, summon a Jade Golem, or shuffle 3 copies of this in your deck. So you could just keep shuffling stuff in, or, you know, basically playing everything else, because ideally you wanted to be shuffling the Jade Idols in at the end, and you would just play all of your spells and just draw through your deck to the point where your deck would be almost empty, and then you just start spamming Jade Idols into your deck so that you could just make bigger and bigger men. This is, if you've played Relic Demon Hunter recently, the play pattern will probably be fairly similar to you, but you also had Fandral Stanghelm, which would do both. So you could play Fandral and then play Jade Idol. You would summon a Jade Golem and shuffle 3 into your deck. This was also back before people figured out that Naturalize was a good card, so they were running Mulch for 3 mana rather than just playing Naturalize. It wasn't until this rotated that people actually tried Naturalize and realized that it wasn't that bad to give your opponent 2 cards in exchange for
It's-
removing a minion.
It's so weird to think back to that time of like just different perceptions we had of various things and how all that's shifted.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see. I mean, it'd be hard to tease apart, but I think part of any meta is just the perceptions of power about different cards, and I'm sure there are always decks that are good that go relatively undiscovered, and refinements that just never really happen during a given meta. So I'm wondering how much of the changes we'll see in Twist will be due to the fact that there's changes to the cards and there's new cards, and also just we've had a lot more years of experience and have a different mindset approaching these older cards. And also wild players, have a lot of experience using these cards in different ways. So I'm definitely curious to see that, some of these lists being modified just by having different perceptions of powers of these cards.
I would expect to see fewer Azure Drakes. I'm fairly confident. I would take the under on number of Azure Drakes that you're going to see in this meta. But it also this also was a pretty good control meta, all things considered. Like, this is the golden age of Reno Lock. Like, this is when Reno Lock really was at its best. And then the control shaman, Edel, you mentioned the Goya shaman last week. And I also have.
I thought that was just in our talking behind the scenes.
Oh, I thought I heard it on the show actually, but yeah,
Maybe.
it's but the Ancestral Spirit, which is a 2-mana spell that says give a minion death rattle, resummon this minion. This was like Carnivorous Cube before Carnivorous Cube was a thing, really. And you have just like every ginormous minion, Yasharaj, original Yasharaj, you would get Ysera so that you could, because you had Madame Goya, which is a 6-mana 4/3 with Battlecry, choose a friendly minion, swap it with a minion in your deck, so you just make a totem and then swap it for a Ysera or a Ragnaros or White Eyes. I remember putting Ancestral Spirit on White Eyes. He would, which is a 5-mana 5/5 with taunts, death rattle, shuffle the Storm Guardian to your deck, which I think was a 5-mana 10/10 if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was fun. Honestly,
Yeah.
I have to say, I feel like there was a missed opportunity for a signature Ragnaros here.
We've got a
Mm,
diamond rag, so
We
you
do
know.
have a diamond rag.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I remember so vividly playing Goya Shaman because my nemesis at the time was Pirate Warrior, because Pirate Warrior
Right.
was nuts. It was so good, and it will probably be decent in this, to be honest, because you still got patches, right? And with the reversion of Small Time Buccaneer,
Yeah.
like Pirate Warrior, Pirate Rogue, I think both could be pretty solid aggro decks. And yeah, it was always very interesting, the games against Pirate Warrior as Goya Shaman, because it was always like just barely getting there if you did, because you would get down an Earth Giant and maybe they would have to trade their face into it a bunch, and then you were just trying to make big taunts, and I think you basically wanted to survive to the point where you could go Halaziel Elemental Destruction, and that would win the game. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
although
this
don't
list
remember-
doesn't even run Halaziel. This was
I was gonna say, because that's not something you would want to fish out of your deck, but
yeah. But this also ran Barnes, right? Which you also wouldn't want to fish out of your deck. So who knows?
yeah.
But
I mean,
Barnes
it's
was, like,
that
such a
weird
good
line
card,
of like having other ways of cheating stuff out, but at the same time, like that lowers your odds of each of them working. It was a weird deck.
Yeah. I mean, you still had Healing Wave, which was like the Joust card that would heal you either 7 or 14 if you won the Joust. So
Yep.
yeah. But that's like Crusher Shaman. That was a deck. God, I remember running that with N'Zoth too. Like I don't. This version doesn't run N'Zoth because you don't want. I don't think you ran N'Zoth in the Goya builds. I think you ran N'Zoth in the not Goya builds because you wouldn't ever want to pull it with Goya. But getting a N'Zoth on like a bunch of White Eyes, and I forget what other Death Rattles you had in there. But you would just, and then you just summon a whole bunch more Storm Guardians and double them up because you would have more of them in your pool because you had the Ancestral Spirits. And yeah, oh man, I cannot wait. Like those are the salad days I'm looking to relive.
I also wanted to highlight some of the decks that I'm seeing. I'm looking right now at a bunch of theory crafts from Habu Gabu. And if you have a more limited older collection, but you do have like some commons and rares, there are a lot of decks here. There's like 5 that don't have any legendaries, and some of them don't have any epics. That I don't know whether he built them specifically to be budget or they just happen to, some of the lower to the ground decks. The legendaries tended to really be aimed at late game more than they are now. And so it was even more true that low to the ground decks were cheaper. There's a priest that's like an Onyx Bishop, resurrection priest with like injured Blade Master. So it's like fast resurrect priest, which I will probably have to give a try. There's an aggressive.
He has
Druid.
Crimson Clergy in there. I don't think Crimson Clergy is legal in Twist.
Yeah, that may not be legal.
Yeah, unfortunately, like leading into this, there isn't a great deck builder to filter exactly how you want to. So it's kind of like, well, just wait until it goes live to be able to actually know exactly what's in, because some of the stuff is kind of weird. It's not doing any of the core set things, but it is doing legacy.
Yeah, that's a great point. So do be careful on the.
But this menagerie shadow form priests. Oh boy. Like you run Ship's Chirurgeon, which is the new card from Caverns, which is a 1-mana 1/2 dragon pirate. After you summon a minion, give it +1 health. So you got dragon stuff. You got like Twilight Whelp, Twilight Guardian, Draconid Operative, which has been buffed to 4 mana. You've got Cabal. I guess Cabal Talon Priest doesn't have a type, but you're just running Haunted Creeper because it's a good card. Netherspite Historian to get more dragons. You have Spawn of Shadows is an undead now, where it wasn't before. You have the Curator, which draws a Beast Dragon and Murloc from your deck. You wouldn't always run a Murloc, and sometimes if you did, it would be like I forget what you would run. Sometimes it would just be Finley, and maybe you could run Finley.
Here you have the
you have the Amalgam.
Amalgam. Yeah, so that is your Murloc.
Yeah, the Infinite Amalgam is the 4-mana 2/4 with Inspire, Frenzy, Spellburst, Honorable Kill, and Overkill. Summon a random 1-cost minion. And then you've got Menagerie Jug and Menagerie Mug, which are the ones that buff minions of different types, +1/+1 and +2/+2, respectively. And then, and also Timeline Accelerator, which is a 3-mana 2/2 mech. Battlecry, draw a mech, it costs 2 less. So the only other mechs in the deck are the other copy, or the Amalgam, or the Curator. So, yeah, this is interesting. I don't know if it ever gets there, but it sure looks interesting.
I mean, yeah, it seems super fun, and it's uniquely like a deck that just in no way would have existed before, right? Because we didn't have Menagerie Mug or Jug, we didn't have Infinite Amalgam, we didn't have Ship's Chirurgeon, so it's just a bunch of new stuff, really. And Shadow Form just like was not used besides memeing for the most part.
How dare you? Have we not talked about the Kibler Shadowform Priest in Karazhan
Yeah.
at length? I
Yeah,
climbed with
Kibler,
that deck.
Exactly. It
I
was a
climbed
Kibler
with that deck. But yeah, it's but I think the menagerie cards that were in Karazhan also like specified Beast, Murloc, Dragon. I don't think they
And
said
that
different
doesn't
types.
make sense anymore.
Right.
Because those were the only types before.
Yeah.
Like there just were not that many minion types, and now we have more. You know, certain things gained types. Right, Spawn of Shadows is an undead, and undead didn't exist before.
Yeah.
You know, there's more like amalgams are more relevant. Yeah, and Ship's Trojan I think is just going to be this crazy turn one play where it pulls out patches as a 1/2, and so you've got these two 1/2s on turn one that now if they don't kill the Ship's Trojan, it's just going to keep buffing all your stuff. I mean, the fact that it's after you summon, right? So if you got one of these out while you do your infinite amalgam stuff, you know, you're going to be buffing all those things. It should be really interesting. And what Menagerie Mug and Jug give you is something that Priest does not typically have, which is a way of buffing a bunch of minions at once. Menagerie Mug is a lot of ways going to be your, or sorry, Menagerie Jug is going to, a lot of ways, be your a tradable thing in Warlock that used to give your demons +2/+2.
Oh yeah, the shifty looking guy with the beard.
Yeah, Shady Bartender.
Thank you.
So
yeah.
You know, often you wouldn't hit more than 3 minions with that anyway. So Menagerie Jug is basically going to serve that purpose. Yeah. And this is just so goofy. Infinite Amalgam. Inspire, Frenzy, Spellburst, Honorable Kill, and Overkill. Summon a random 1-cost minion. Like, it's just so weird.
But I mean, Shadow Form plus Spawn of Shadows on 7 mana is just 10 damage face.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not nothing. So, because like Spawn of Shadows didn't have the battle cry before, it was just Inspire. So then that would have been 6. That would have been 6 damage at most with this combo. Now it's 10. That's a big deal.
That's a big finisher, and you know, Draconid Operative being 4 mana 4/5 now instead of 5 mana 5/6, just like lowers the curve nicely. And there are going to be times where you go Infinite Amalgam, coin Power Word Shield or something? Oh, I guess Spellburst only happens the one time. But it's just going to be weird, like, how the various ways that you will proc Infinite Amalgam to, you know, make your board once again. And with all of the additional minion types that they've added, it's like decent odds that the 1-drops you're summoning will, you know, have a minion type to then get buffed by Jug.
No, that's why you have Shadow Form, because you go on 6, you go Amalgam, Shadow, and then Hero Power it, and you have three minions on board.
Mm-hmm.
Because it'll proc both the Inspire and the Frenzy.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
And if you coin that, you also get the Spellburst. So you get 4 minions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I really enjoyed, this is like fast Dragon Priest, but Menagerie and incorporating a lot of the new cards. So I think I found my first day one deck here. We'll see how it actually plays, but I love that there's decks that are nostalgic and decks that are totally new.
Yeah.
Both in this format. You know, if you are a fan of, you know, I see like a Miracle Rogue, there's a Death Rattle Hunter, or you could play, you know, a Highlander deck. Maybe not the Reno Priest in the Battle Ready decks, but
I will say some of these things from Habu I find a tad questionable. Like, even with the change, I don't think we want to be running Flame Leviathan in our Reno Mage, right? You know, it's cute that he's got Timeline Accelerator, which is the draw mech. It costs 2 less, and so that can draw Anti-Keelbot or Flame Leviathan. But I mean, come on. I don't think we need to be doing that.
Yeah. Didn't we run
So there are
Pyroblast
34
in
decks here,
Yeah.
right? Most of them are not going to be the meta decks. So do keep that in mind if you're looking at these.
Yeah. I feel like we ran Pyroblast and Reno Mage to be able to go Inkmaster Solia Pyroblast back then with something else, but maybe I'm just like hallucinating that. I don't know.
Yeah, so Inkmaster Solia would make your next spell you cast cost 0, right? So you could do a 0 mana Pyro, and then Blazing Torch potentially for 16 damage total.
It's not nothing.
The State of the Wild podcast people also have Flame Leviathan in their Highlander Mage. Interesting.
I mean, I guess it has Rush now, and if you get it discounted, that's a 5 mana 7/7 Rush. I'm much more interested in doing like Ronin plus Antonidas, but maybe that's optimistic. I don't know.
Maybe without Apprentice, I don't know how you're doing that. I guess is the problem.
Well, Ronin giving you the 3 missiles, right? You can still
just get the fireballs for next
Tony
turn,
missile, get 3 fireballs.
Back when Tony meant Antonidas, and not.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh man,
it was a long enough gap that we didn't get confused there. But Antonidas, the one who gives you fireballs when you cast a spell.
Yep.
And he's got an Anyfin Paladin. Oh, that was a deck. I don't even know if it was played in this meta, but where you would just summon. You would have Finja, you'd have Murloc War Leader and Bluegill Warrior because it still had charge at the time, and then you would just and old Murkai is back to like old Murkai was never in the deck in standard when you had Anyfin, and then Anyfin Can Happen is a 10 mana spell that says summon 7 Murlocs that died this game. So you're getting the 2 War Leaders and then the 3 charge Murlocs. And then you just have a Finja on the board, I guess, to hit them in the face the next turn if stuff lives. But, yeah. And then you get to run stuff like Rooney Time Explorer, which is the new legendary that discovers a location from the future. And Wicker Flame Burn Bristle, which is just fun to say.
I always loved Wicker Flame Burn Bristle. Like, what a good card. And now, I mean, you still want to hand buff it in your Paladin, so that's pretty easy to do, but being just baseline 3 mana 3/3 Taunt, Divine Shield, Lifesteal, pretty solid to sort of bide your time into the mid game as Pally.
Yeah, and Enter the Colosseum now that it's been buffed down to 3 mana, which is actually good. It's a spell that destroy all minions except each player's highest attack minion when you want the Murlocs to die before your opponent can devolve them or whatever. Right, then that's actually a benefit to you to being able to kill them off. So
yeah.
Oh man.
There's a Yogg Miracle Rogue here.
Oh no.
In the again, don't know if it's good with Edvin Van Cleef, of course. Emperor Thaurissan, 2 Gadget Zan Auctioneers, Arcane Giants. There's some memory lane there.
Yeah.
And just the Jade Shurikens, interestingly. Like no other Jade cards, just the Shurikens, just because they're 2 mana deal 3, and they happen to get you you don't even have to combo them if you don't want to. It doesn't even matter. But
yeah, I mean 2 mana deal 3. That buff just makes it a solid card, right? Like it's a Dark Bomb that sometimes gives you a minion. Okay.
I'll take it.
Although Dark Bomb also got a buff. Maybe that's part of why.
Justice for Dark Bomb.
Yeah, and then there is a Cthulhu Warrior here running I Know a Guy, which I don't think was ever run back then. Discover a taunt minion, give it +1/+2. And I don't know about Beckoner of Evil, because like that was always the first Cthulhu card to get cut, was the 2 mana 2/3. And he's not running Hobart in here, which I think but he also doesn't have any weapons, I guess, so that may make sense. But I would think
Yeah.
you'd want to just run some weapons and like I mean, Fiery War Axe is back to 2 mana in this format, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you probably just run War Axe and then maybe one other weapon or something like that just to be able to run Hobart.
I think a card that strikes me in Warrior that got buffed is Stolen Goods, because we didn't used to have targeted draw in the same way.
Mm.
And so having now Stolen Goods being 2 mana, draw a taunt minion, give it +2/+2, like that can specifically find your Crazed Worshipper or the new card Eye Stalk of Cthulhu, which are both going to be like very powerful for a warrior like this, or Ally Armorsmith, right? If you're playing that as a 5/9 taunt, like getting these specific taunt minions is going to be really, really powerful, I think.
Oh, and Edel, did you see the Iron Juggernaut N'Zoth Warrior?
I mean, look, there's no Boomsday, right? So there's no wrench caliber or anything. So you can't quite do a bomb warrior, since it's just like the mines, maybe 2 mines if you brand it, and then the couple of bombs from Blast from the Past. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can run it just cause.
I mean, it's still damage, eventually.
I mean, I suppose now that it's Battlecry and Death Rattle, if you brand Iron Juggernaut, there is 30 damage in your opponent's deck somewhere.
He's not even running Bran. He's just running N'Zoth to get a second one eventually.
Yeah.
But I mean, but I guess that's still 30, right? Because you're getting the Battlecry and the Death Rattle from Iron Juggernaut, then you're getting another Death Rattle from N'Zoth. So
Right. Yeah.
man,
Yeah,
sleep
there's
with
going
the
to be
fishes.
just
Wow.
so much stuff to do that I'm going to spend like an entire day of just theory crafting once everything's in the client, because there's just not a great way of deck building right now.
Yeah.
And just certain things like Leroy Jenkins is relevant again, right? Like,
Yeah.
There's
You
so
can play
many-
Wiki. Yeah.
In the State of the Wild podcast hosts have, of course, a druid with Aviana and Cocoon the Forgotten King, because now Aviana is only 9 mana, so you can play her and then play Cocoon for 1, refresh all your mana crystals, and go play everything else in your hand. So I don't know whether that goes the same way where it's like ANR in Standard, where we thought that was going to be insane, and then we haven't really seen it. Although this is, a different power level format. But I'm out of town this coming weekend, and I need to like be social and
Oh,
do things.
imagine.
It's such bad.
I'm sorry. I'm so
timing.
sorry.
terrible.
It'll be
It's a
fun trip,
long weekend
but-
too.
I was so close to having all this time for Twist.
Yeah. Well,
Oh.
you got a whole month, so I'm sure you'll be fine.
I've got 2
I will
streams
find
to get in
time.
this weekend. I'll enjoy it for both of us. Okay, that'll.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just looking at all this stuff. It's really cool, both kind of walking down memory lane, but then also seeing new stuff, right? Like the Warlock Void Caller. There's an entirely new minion in Enslaved Fell Lord for it to pull, which is the 7 mana 4/10 taunt that also damages minions next to whomever this attacks. Like, that minion just wasn't around.
Yeah,
and
and
of course
Jiraxis,
they-
and you could run Jiraxis because it's not going to set you to 15, like it did. Like we
I-
ran
Yeah.
Jiraxis in Reno Lock, knowing that it was going to set us to 15 back then.
Sometimes you needed to Alex yourself back up to 15. But yeah, it was this weird thing of like you could only play it in that situation.
It is worth
I-
noting that just things like Dark Peddler in particular, because I'm seeing that in this list. Keep in mind if you played back then, some of these cards that are discovers are not going to be as good as they were then because you got class offering bonuses on the discovers. Back then,
Yeah.
you no longer get that. So like Dark Peddler would almost always get you like Power Overwhelming or Soulfire or Mortal Coil or something really good because the 1-mana spells for Warlock were really good, and now it's going to get you a lot more like 1-mana minions, which are going to be less good.
It's fine. You just discard them, right?
More fodder for your discard.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 2/3 now, so
Yeah.
it's. Yeah, I kind of am a little scared of Pirate Warrior and Disco Lock. It just like some of these aggro decks, I think are gonna be kind of nutty out the gates. Like the fact that Pirate Warrior has, under small time Buccaneer, you still N'Zoth out patches. Like no patches doesn't have charge, but you've got all these charge things, and then sometimes you're gonna curve Brass Knuckles into Hobart, I guess, or anything
Warax.
into Hobart, like.
Yeah.
I
mean, you've got N'Zoth's First Mate,
then-
which gives you a weapon. You've got Brass Knuckles. You've got Warax, right?
Like you're gonna have a weapon if you have Hobart in hand. Like it's basically Pirate Warrior, but now sometimes there's a Keliseth ×2 effect, and it's buffing a whole bunch of charge minions in their hand and deck. So I guess the one thing that it's missing is like card draw, thank goodness. But the deck is scary, and every once in a while, Finley is going to find them the Warlock hero power.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was the
there's
win- that was the
back
win
to
con.
9 classes. Yeah.
That was you looked for the Hunter hero power or the Warlock hero power when you were playing Finley. Those are the two that you wanted in these decks because they were always aggro decks that always wanted to get anything other than the hero power that they started with. And you would always be looking for Warlock or Hunter just for extra damage or extra.
And most of the time, you'd find one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing he doesn't have here that I remember is the Dragon Warrior, the like Dragon Temple Warrior with Champion of Alexstrasza.
Oh yeah,
was a
that
great
was
deck.
a Whispers of the Old God deck because that fell off super hard once Gadget Sand came out. I know.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, there were a lot of good Gadgets and things. But man, I miss Varian Rin. I'll be excited
Varian
if I get to play
Rin.
Varian
Oh,
Rin
man.
again.
That is a throwback. Holy smokes. Yeah. Varian Rin, wow.
But I think so. If this has legacy, does that mean we'll have Sylvanas and Rag?
Yeah, we should.
So that's also a difference, right? Because when Whispers came out, they rotated for the first time.
No, they rotated after Gadgets and they rotated Sylvanas and Rag.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they had the Hall of Fame. They didn't have the Hall of Fame when they did the first rotation. They just nerfed those cards into the ground. Like Blade Flurry and Force of Nature and like Big Game Hunter, Ironbeak Owl. They didn't rotate any of those. They didn't Hall of Fame any of those. They just nerfed them into the ground. It was after the Gadget Sand rotation or as part of the rotation into Ongoro that they came up with the concept of the Hall of Fame in order to get some of those out. Because they rotated they rotated the same time as Azure Drake, and Azure Drake was all over these decks originally.
I guess I thought that Year of the Kraken introduced this idea of like years and standard being a certain amount of time, and they created the Hall of Fame, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, they
do
had to create
have
the Hall of
Rag in
Fame
these
after
decks.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Like the
Yeah.
old ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they
Wow.
they didn't have that tool in their tool belt originally. They just had nerfs, and that's when they took the Banhammer to mid range Druid, because that was really where Force of Nature, Savage Roar was like everywhere, and that deck wasn't going to lose anything at rotation, so they just nerfed those into the ground. That's when they changed Force of Nature from summon 3/2/2s with charge that died at the end of the turn to just summon 3/2/2s.
Right.
And that killed it. But yeah, Raggan, Sylvanas, and Azure Drake all went out at the same time after that rotation.
Gotcha.
Well, if we keep talking about this, Twist is going to be live by the time we're done.
Let's do
I know it's not that long from time of recording here. We're just
Yeah.
about 5 hours out
It looks fun.
being live. It looks
Keep an eye out
super
in the
fun.
Discord for decks. I'm going to be spending a whole bunch of time building deck lists tomorrow, I can imagine.
I also want that Implock list that you were talking about at the top of the show. And if you're listening to this and you're curious about anything we've been talking about, you can always check out the show notes. We have links to everything that we've been discussing. So that's generally always true. And between us, keep it's even more detailed, I think, than it used to be, because that is my personality. Although Wicked Good is usually the one to thank for getting it all set up and getting a lot of the material into it, especially the news. So thank you for that. But
I usually
all
run
right.
out of steam by the time I'm done putting the links in the news. So
That's a lot.
yeah.
All right, any final words on Twist?
I'm looking forward to
No,
it.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Doshi K, Crash, Beef Squatch, David P, Walu, Jeremy T, Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Enraged Chicken, and Crizzly Bear. Coin Conceits.
I will coin concede first to our patron, Night Owl 6. I've had to reschedule our coaching twice. Second time due to I had my power go out 2 times in the past 2 days, each evening. So I'm really glad that at least it could still happen in this last minute of the show, but the power did not go out tonight. And then I had another conflict earlier. So thank you for your flexibility on that. And it works out because we'll be able to do a Twist-related coaching in September. Also, coin concede to Larian Studios for Baldur's Gate 3. That game is insane. And coin concede to Donkey for just having a great site that's been like so useful for looking at all these decks and planning ahead for Twist. And just in general, it is a great site. It is very useful for lots of things.
Yep. I think it's got to be the most used site by us casters. I mean, people in general who play Hearthstone, but particularly when I'm casting, I use the Donkey site so much. Wicked?
Well, I'm going to coin concede to Stormrage because he had on Squelch they call it objection. We can't use that term because that would be copyright infringement. So I'll just call it some follow-up, or FU for short. So he had some FU for us. He said, one, I've not stated that I need to go to Taco Bell during BlizzCon. Do I think it's perfect to get delivered to your room at midnight after you've had too many beverages with friends? Yes. I take that as valid and yet invalid all at the same time. That is still there. You could still do better than Taco Bell at BlizzCon getting delivered, like In-N-Out for starters. And he said, well, he says we also have Carl's Jr. In-N-Out, all the places that I listed, and In-N-Out is in a bit of a drive, but isn't terribly far. But like, again, you have In-N-Out like within DoorDash range. And I understand that not In-N-Out is not everyone's cup of tea, but like In-N-Out or Taco Bell, like that's not a tough choice. I'm sorry. Like I mean, maybe when you don't appreciate the gloriousness of pancakes, then that's something that you can do. But I don't know. So he also said Sway was going to say that she likes waffles, and I cut her off, and that was rude. And yes, I did, and I'm not sorry, because we don't need that kind of talk on this podcast. And also, he points out that Smarms is just as much of a degenerate as he is, which maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the one giving out the awards. So, I will leave that to a court of law to decide, I suppose. But, Stormrage is a wonderful human, even if he has terrible, terrible taste in both breakfast foods and fast food. But, we love him anyway.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, and then I'm just going to concede to all the listeners and everyone for being patient and understanding with the last episode, which came a bit later than intended because I lost my power in a tornado. It didn't touch down particularly near us, but it was nonetheless a harrowing experience. We around maybe 11:30 got an alarm on our phones, and I went into the bedroom and woke up my wife and was like, "Hey, I think we should go to the basement." And she was like, "Do we have to?" I was like, "Well, you can stay here, but I'm going down with the baby." And so I took the baby into my thankfully finished, nice little waterproofed office in the corner that I'm recording out of now. And about 5-10 minutes later, my wife came down because she was like, "Yeah, I heard something outside that sounded vaguely like a sucking sound or some kind of vacuum. So it seemed like a good idea to not just try and sleep through it." And yeah, it was not fun. And then eventually our power cut out. It was weird. It was sort of like a brownout at first, where it was basically nothing that used a heavy amount of power was working. So the internet was dead, and my computer wouldn't work. My computer was actually like trying to turn on. It would keep like turning on and then shutting off, and then turning on and shutting off. So I just like cut the power. But like some of our lights still worked, and yeah, eventually it all went out. And once the worst of the storm blew over, we went to my in-laws who had power, and then a few hours later, their power cut. And then we ended up going to my mom's place because somehow she had power over, in the city proper, outskirts of the city. And we just stayed there because my mom's out of town anyway. But I tried to bring my PC to edit from my mom's apartment, and then I realized that I left my keyboard. So, but by the time like everything was situated, it made more sense to just take it all back home and edit once I was back home. And at that point, the weekend was over. So that is the saga of how the episode came to be released late Monday.
It was worth the wait, though. It was, we were just letting it age gracefully,
Yeah, exactly.
Like a steak or cheese or something.
Once again, providing extra value for our patrons who get the raw audio Thursday night.
Yeah. So anyway, enjoy Twist and keep calm and buff your Cthulhu. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Well, that'll teach me to say, well, we'll just have a short show tonight.
It was better.
It was shorter.
Yeah.
Than some of our recent shows.
Yeah.
It did that classic thing of looking like it was going to be pretty short, and then that just not happening.
And then we got stuck in nostalgia for an hour. Which, all
yeah,
good.
we started rambling. It happens.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out and listening. We should find someone to raid.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
So
Let's see.
I should be able to edit this tomorrow, assuming
Yeah.
no tornadoes.
Oh well, Corbett's already playing Twist because he's living in the future. So I think we should go ahead and raid him. I think that
Wait,
would be
what? How is what?
He's probably playing on Asia. Because they would
You
have
can
flipped
do
over
that?
already. Yeah.
I didn't realize it worked that way.
Yeah, it's server reset time.
Huh. Fascinating.
Now you know. So let
All right,
me.
so you can all go see it in action.
Yeah. So I'm just getting to the point where I can.
I just want to build decks.
build.
Why?
Well, you can build them on Asia and then copy them. I guess I don't know.
That actually
Assuming you
might
have
be
the cards.
worth it. Oh, right. Yeah, which I distinctly would not.
Yeah.
I could like. And they don't even let you put things in as shadows. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Rude.
All right. Well, raid's ready. So go say hi to Corbett. Go watch some Twist, and we'll see you next
Bye,
week.
friends.
Bye.